I'm male, 58. Never thought I'd be posting here about my family business problems, but I honestly don't know who else to talk to that won't have some personal stake in all this. I founded Thompson Medical Supplies, fake name, about 25 years ago, after leaving a pretty cushy corporate job at a pharmaceutical company. Everyone thought I was insane for giving up benefits and security, but I had this idea for a lightweight IV stand that I couldn't get out of my head. Sounds boring, I know, lol. Started literally in our garage while my wife Marie, female, 56, did all the accounting and somehow managed to raise our kids at the same time. God, we mortgaged our first house 3 separate times just to keep things afloat. I missed my son's first birthday because I was in Chicago closing our first hospital contract. Not my proudest moment, but we were literally weeks away from bankruptcy. Marie has never really let me forget that one. Probably fair, honestly. Fast forward to now. We've got over 200 employees, and the company has grown beyond anything I could have imagined. Marie's on the board of directors now. Our son Ryan, male, 32, is VP of Business Development. Got his MBA from Cornell, which by the way I paid for, even though I thought a state school would have been fine, but whatever. And our daughter, Christina, female 29, is our chief research officer after getting her PhD in biomedical engineering. She's developed several devices we've patented. Her portable dialysis machine is honestly amazing. Not that I'm playing favorites or anything. Both my kids are smart, just in different ways. I guess I've always pushed Ryan harder. When he was growing up, I was probably tougher on him than Christina because I figured he'd eventually take over the business. But honestly, Christina's technical innovations have been keeping us competitive these last few years. She's just got this understanding of both the engineering and the medical applications. Ryan's more of a people person, great at networking and closing deals. So here's where things get complicated. We're in final negotiations to acquire this competitor called Medinova for around $75 million, which is a huge deal for a company our size. This acquisition would basically be the biggest thing in my career before I start thinking about retirement. The whole deal centers around combining Christina's portable dialysis device with Medinova's distribution technology. It's a perfect match on paper. I haven't really made any formal succession plans yet, which I realize now was probably a mistake. There's definitely some bad feelings between my kids about who's going to take over when I step down. Ryan obviously thinks it should be him since he's older and has the business degree, but Christina's innovations are what's driving our growth. I keep telling myself I'll figure it out after this acquisition is done. So last week, we're having a family dinner. We try to do this once a month even though we see each other at work every day. And I get this alert from our IT security system. Someone accessed Christina's confidential files containing both technical specs and our acquisition strategy details. I tried to hide my concern during dinner, but I was freaking out internally. Our IT director, William, is my college roommate's son. He really knows his stuff with computers. Anyway, after dinner, I asked Ryan to come to my office. I showed him the access logs with his credentials on them. At first, he acted casual and denied it, but when I showed him more details, he admitted he did look at the files. He claimed I had given him permission to access those files as part of his executive training, which I never did. He got defensive, saying he needed to understand the technical side to negotiate effectively. When I asked why he didn't just ask Christina directly, he said she treats him like he's technically stupid. He ended up storming out, saying, "You've always trusted her more anyway," which honestly hurt because if anything, I've always been harder on him because I expected him to take over someday. Here's where it gets really bad. I found out yesterday that Ryan has gone to several board members claiming that I engineered the leak as some kind of negotiation tactic to drive down Mednova's price. I was completely shocked. My own son basically accusing me of corporate espionage to the board. And now Medinova is suddenly making demands that exactly mirror information that was only in those confidential files. This can't be a coincidence, right? To make things worse, I just discovered that Ryan's college friend Victor is now a Medinova investor. I didn't even know they were still in touch. I want to believe Ryan was just trying to get a better understanding of the technical side of the business. Maybe he was feeling insecure about his role in the acquisition. But the timing with Medinova's new demands and his connection to Victor, it just looks really bad. The board is demanding answers before our meeting next week. I'm completely torn between protecting my son and doing what's right for the company. If Ryan deliberately leaked information to Medinova, that's not just a family issue. It's potentially illegal corporate espionage that could ruin the entire acquisition. My wife thinks I'm overreacting and should just let it go. She keeps saying he was just trying to help, but I don't think she understands the seriousness of what might have happened here. I built this company from nothing, mortgaged our house multiple times, missed birthdays and anniversaries, and now it could all be at risk because my son may have betrayed my trust. I don't even know what to do at this point. Has anyone dealt with something like this before? How do you choose between your company and your child? Edit. A lot of people are asking if I'm sure it was Ryan who accessed the files. Yes, the logs show his credentials were used. Whether he shared his login with someone else is another question, but he's already admitted to accessing the files. Edit 2. To clarify about the Medinova demands, they suddenly started asking for very specific concessions related to Christina's technology that weren't part of earlier negotiations. They're asking for details that were only in those confidential files. Edit 3. Some people are asking why I'm not going directly to the authorities. This is my son we're talking about. I need to understand exactly what happened before I potentially ruin his life and career. And yes, I'm aware this could be considered covering up wrongdoing, but I need to be 100% certain before taking that step. Now for the first update. Okay, so first I want to thank everyone who commented on my post last week. I honestly wasn't expecting so many responses. Some were pretty harsh, but I guess that's what I get for putting family business online. A lot of you told me I needed to get more information before the board meeting instead of just confronting Ryan with suspicions. That turned out to be good advice, even though I wish it hadn't. I know a bunch of you were saying I should have gone straight to the police, but this is my son we're talking about. I needed to be 100% sure before doing anything that would permanently damage his future. I mean, maybe there was a reasonable explanation, right? Spoiler alert, there wasn't. Anyway, this whole situation reminds me of something my dad told me when I was first starting the business. He said, trust but verify. I've basically lived by that my whole career. It's probably why we're still in business after 25 years when so many others went under during the 2008 recession. So after my last post, I decided to dig deeper before the board meeting. Marie kept telling me to give Ryan the benefit of the doubt. She kept saying, he's always been loyal to the company, and there must be a misunderstanding. She's always been softer on the kids than me, especially Ryan. I don't think she really understands how serious this is. This isn't just about family disagreements. This could literally destroy the company we built. I went to William in IT the next morning. I asked him to check Ryan's company emails and text messages from the company phone to see if there was any communication with Victor or anyone else at Medinova. What William found, God, I still can't believe it. There were dozens of text messages between Ryan and Victor over the past few months. At first, it was just casual stuff, catching up, talking about sports. But then the messages started getting into company business. Ryan had sent Victor messages saying he got access to Christina's technical files and that it would help them prepare a counteroffer that makes Ryan look essential to the deal. I felt sick reading that. My own son. There were other messages too, where Ryan complained about being in Christina's shadow. He said Dad's golden child gets all the credit while he does all the actual business work, and that once the deal goes through, he'll finally have leverage to get what he wants. I don't even know where this is coming from. I've always supported both my kids equally. I mean, I paid for Ryan's entire college and MBA at Cornell, for God's sake. Do you know how expensive that was? Christina went to state school on a scholarship. But the absolute worst part was when William found text messages from months ago where Ryan had explicitly asked me for access to these exact files, and I had clearly told him no. I honestly had forgotten about this conversation because I was traveling so much during that time, meeting with potential investors for the acquisition. So Ryan had basically lied to the board members when he claimed I gave him permission. It wasn't a misunderstanding or him misremembering, it was a deliberate lie. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just kept reading those messages over and over, hoping I'd find something that would make this less awful than it seemed. But it just got worse the more I read. When I finally showed everything to Marie, God, that was awful. At first, she tried to defend him. She thought maybe the messages were being taken out of context, or he was just trying to impress Victor. So I showed her more messages, proving how deliberate it all was. She started crying and said he's still our son. I told her I know that, but this could have legal consequences for the entire company. This is potentially criminal. Then she got angry and said I've always expected perfection from him and nothing he does is ever good enough for me, which is completely unfair. I've always supported Ryan. She brought up how I missed his college graduation because of that emergency with the Walker contract. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Let a $2 million deal fall apart. That money helped pay for his MBA. We argued for hours. She kept saying there must be another way, but couldn't actually suggest what that might be. Finally, she agreed we needed to handle the breach properly, but made me promise to try to protect Ryan somehow. The next morning, I met with Dave, our chief legal officer. He basically confirmed my worst fears. He said that as CEO and majority shareholder, I had a duty to disclose this information to the board. If I tried to cover it up and it came out later, I could personally face fraud charges, not to mention breach of duty. The company could face massive liability. I kept asking if there was any way to handle this that wouldn't destroy Ryan's career, and Dave just kept saying no. He said, given the evidence of deliberate leaking of confidential information to a competitor during active negotiations, there was no way to sugarcoat this. I spent the next 3 days barely sleeping, trying to figure out what to do. I started drafting an email to Ryan explaining everything, but every version I wrote sounded either too angry or too weak. In the end, I decided to let the evidence speak for itself at the board meeting. The emergency board meeting was, God, I don't even know how to describe it. Probably the worst day of my professional life. I opened by explaining what we'd discovered about the information leak. The board members were shocked. I could see it on their faces. When I started displaying the text messages between Ryan and Victor on the screen, the room went completely silent. Ryan walked in looking confident, probably thinking this was just a strategy meeting about the acquisition. But when he saw those messages on the screen, he looked shocked. He immediately started yelling that I had violated his privacy by looking at his text messages. They were on a company phone that literally has a disclosure statement saying all communications can be monitored, but whatever. He accused me of choosing the company over family. Christina came in late. She had been in the lab, and when she saw her technical specifications on the screen and realized what had happened, she gasped so loudly everyone turned to look at her. The look on her face, I'll never forget it. Just complete betrayal. Ryan tried to claim he was only trying to help the company succeed, but then Darren asked about his relationship with Victor and whether he was promised anything in return for the information. Ryan just looked at Marie, clearly expecting her to defend him, but she couldn't even look him in the eye. I think that's when he realized how serious this was. The board voted unanimously to suspend him pending a full investigation. They really had no choice given the evidence. Ryan stormed out without speaking to anyone. Christina ran after him, but came back a few minutes later in tears, saying he'd refused to talk to her. That afternoon, Christina discovered that some of her research protocols had been compromised, which might affect our patent applications. So on top of everything else, we're now facing potential intellectual property issues. Ryan moved out of the house that same day. He left a note saying, I guess the company will always come first. Like I'm the bad guy here. He's the one who leaked confidential information to a competitor. The Mednova deal is now in trouble. Their lawyers are demanding all kinds of additional concessions now that they know we're in a vulnerable position. Marie hasn't really spoken to me in 3 days, except about necessary household stuff like, can you take out the trash, or we need milk. I know she's torn between supporting my decision and worrying about Ryan. I get it. He's her son too. But what was I supposed to do? Let him sabotage the company that supports our entire family. Let him potentially face criminal charges if this came out some other way. I keep asking myself if I made the right choice. I mean, I know legally and ethically it was the only option. I have responsibilities to our shareholders, our employees, Christina's research team. But as a father, God, I don't know. Should I have found some way to handle this privately? Some of you, in the comments of my last post, said I've been playing favorites with Christina for years. That's not true. I love both my kids equally. It's just that Christina has never given me reason to doubt her commitment to the company or her integrity. She's always been so reliable. Ryan has too until now. I just don't understand what changed or why he would do this. Edit. Several people are asking if I've tried to contact Ryan since the board meeting. Yes, I've called and texted multiple times, but he's not responding. Marie has talked to him briefly, but he won't tell her where he's staying. To those suggesting I should have given Ryan a warning instead of bringing everything to the board, the legal advice I received was very clear that as CEO, I had a legal obligation to disclose this to the board once I had evidence. This wasn't just about company policy. It was about potential securities fraud and corporate espionage. Someone asked about Christina's reaction. She's devastated. She and Ryan have always been competitive, but they're still siblings. She didn't want this outcome either. She's thrown herself into trying to salvage the technical aspects of the deal. Now for the second update. It's been about a month since everything blew up with Ryan and the board meeting. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my last post, even the people who were pretty harsh with me, and there were a lot of you. I get it. I probably came across as playing favorites with my kids. Several of you pointed that out, and honestly, I never saw it that way until reading your comments made me really think about it. Maybe I have been harder on Ryan his whole life while giving Christina more leeway. I don't know. It's hard to see your own blind spots, I guess. Anyway, a lot has happened since my last update. The Medinova deal actually went through, if you can believe it. After everything that happened with Ryan, I wasn't sure we'd be able to salvage it. We had to be completely transparent about the data breach with their team. Ended up having basically 4 straight days of emergency negotiations to restructure the terms. During one of those all-night sessions, I actually started having these chest pains that were pretty bad. My right arm was going numb and everything. Our CFO wanted me to go to the hospital, but I refused to leave until we had an agreement. I mean, what good is my health if the company we built for 25 years falls apart, right? Marie was furious when she found out about this later, said I was being stupid and reckless. Christina really stepped up during all of this. She handled all the technical discussions and impressed everyone with how well she understood both the business and technical aspects of the deal. The Medinova team kept trying to get more concessions on her portable dialysis technology, but she held firm on the core patents while finding ways to give them what they needed. I was amazed watching her work. While all that was happening, our legal team investigated the extent of Ryan's corporate espionage. Turns out he'd been sharing confidential information with Victor for almost a year. Not just about the Medinova deal, but product specs, financial projections, even salary information for key employees. The worst part was when they found draft business plans on his company laptop. He had been approaching some of our investors about potentially starting a competing company if he couldn't get more control at Thompson Medical. There were even lists of which employees he planned to try to hire away from us. I keep trying to tell myself he was just exploring options or something. Like maybe he wasn't actually planning to compete with us. Maybe he was just frustrated and venting. I don't know. It's hard to accept that your own son would do something like this. The board reconvened last week to make a final decision about Ryan's future with the company. My brother-in-law Darren actually argued for giving Ryan a second chance. He said, "We've all made mistakes, and Ryan grew up in this company. It's in his blood." A couple other board members seemed open to the idea of some kind of probationary arrangement. But then Dave presented all the evidence from the investigation. The scope of what Ryan had done, it was just too much to ignore. The board voted unanimously to permanently remove him from the company. And then they went a step further. There's this clause in our company bylaws that I wrote myself years ago when we were first setting up the succession planning. It says that if a family member does things that put the company at risk, their inheritance of controlling shares can be placed in an independent trust with conditions for getting it back. So basically, the board used this clause. Ryan's future inheritance of his 40% stake will now be managed by a trustee, with conditions he'd need to meet to ever regain control. It basically cuts him off from a business perspective, though he'll still get the money eventually. Marie was so quiet during the whole meeting. I thought she was finally understanding why we had to do this, but later I realized she was just really upset. She barely said anything for days afterward. I tried to explain that we had no choice given the evidence, but she just keeps saying, "There's always a choice." Christina has been stepping into a bigger leadership role. I've basically been preparing her to take over as CEO once I retire, which I've now decided will happen sooner rather than later. She's brilliant, and the employees respect her, but I can tell her heart isn't fully in it. She never wanted to push Ryan out, despite their competitive relationship, but she's doing it because she feels responsible for the company and our employees. The weird thing is, and I feel terrible even saying this, but the company is actually stronger after this crisis. Our employees have rallied around Christina's leadership. The investors are more confident in our direction. The Medinova integration is going more smoothly than we expected. It's like we're more focused and united as a company than before, which makes the personal cost even harder to bear. Last week, I found out through Marie that Ryan was planning to move across the country. I decided I needed to see him before he left, so I drove to his apartment unannounced. When he saw me through the peephole, he refused to open the door. I ended up calling Marie, who convinced him to at least hear us out. When he finally let us in, he just stood there with his arms crossed. There were packed boxes everywhere. I tried to explain again why I had to take the actions I did given the evidence. I told him I had a legal obligation to the board and the shareholders. I started to say that if there had been any other way, but he cut me off. Ryan told me I could have handled this privately instead of humiliating him in front of the entire board. I told him about the trust fund I was setting up for him separate from the company, so he'd still be taken care of financially. He just laughed and said I was trying to buy him off. Marie suggested family counseling, saying we could work through this together over time. Ryan told her it was too late since she didn't defend him at the board meeting. She just sat there. I admitted to him that maybe I had favored Christina over the years without realizing it, that I was harder on him because I always imagined he would take over. He just shook his head and said at least I finally admitted what everyone else had always known. Marie started crying, begging him not to cut us off completely. He softened a little then and said he needed time away from the family and the humiliation. That maybe someday we could talk again, but right now he couldn't even look at me without feeling betrayed. I tried to shake his hand as we were leaving. He hesitated for what felt like forever, then briefly took my hand before turning away. He moved to Seattle the next day, changed his phone number. He only communicates occasionally with Marie through email now, won't respond to any of my messages at all. The extended family has completely divided over this. My sister thinks I did what I had to do. Marie's brother hasn't spoken to me since the board meeting. He thinks I betrayed my own son. Thanksgiving was painful. Several relatives declined to attend because of the rift. Christina barely spoke during dinner, just sat there pushing food around her plate. She's become so withdrawn lately, just focused entirely on work. I'm speeding up my retirement plans now. I'll step down as CEO within 18 months. I've set up a personal trust for Ryan that's separate from the business, so at least he'll be financially secure even if he never comes back to the company. I've started seeing a therapist to try to understand my role in how all this happened. Marie has actually suggested separation twice since everything happened. That was, God, I never thought our marriage would be at risk through all of this. We're in counseling now, trying to save what's left of our relationship. 35 years of marriage and it could all fall apart over this. I keep asking myself if building this business was worth the cost to my family. I made so many mistakes as both a father and a business leader. The way I handled the rivalry between my kids over the years. I see now how I contributed to all of this without realizing it. This has been the most painful lesson of my life about the true cost of success. Edit. Several people have asked if Ryan could face legal consequences. We decided as a board not to pursue any criminal charges. The trust arrangement was considered sufficient. I couldn't bear the thought of my son facing prosecution, despite everything. Someone asked about Christina's patents. Yes, we were able to secure them despite the information leak. Our legal team worked overtime to file additional protections. She's actually developing a new version of the portable dialysis machine that will be even better than the original.